This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation. Hold on. You mean to tell me you haven't saved March 24th for the Maryland Association of Christian Schools Administrators Retreat at Restoration Farm in Harford County, Maryland? For only $30, you get 2 great meals, Q&A with veteran leaders, some hilarious hosts, and just time spent in fellowship with those who know what you're going through. And if you're a Max member, it's free. Come on, email us at info@christianprinciplespodcast.com and register now. Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast. I'm Matt George.
And I'm Mark Zockel. This is going to come out at a time where I'm just cold. I'm tired of being cold. I want the sun to shine again in the warmth and the grandeur, which is summer. For those of our community listening in Florida right now, I saw it was 75 and 84 degrees.
Whoa,
I'm envious.
rough.
I'm telling you, I'm envious right now. I want that back so bad. I'm ready.
I've already had that experience on Friday during dismissal. My foot kind of slipped off of the sidewalk, and I was like, "Whoa, what am I standing on?" And I looked down, and that's grass. I forgot what that feels like already.
I'm glad to be seeing that. We had our years long, 4 or 5 years worth of snow on that one day a couple weeks ago. So I'm ready to be done with that.
Yeah, let's move on from that.
Listen, if I had a choice.
Oh.
All right.
He jumped in.
If I had a choice, I would. Well, I do have a choice, but anyway, let's just keep going. Okay. I'm here with you. This is what I choose to be. You know what else I'm choosing right now? Let's choose to send it over to our brand partners, actually.
The Christian Principles Podcast is excited to share that we've joined the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network, a hub dedicated to advancing K-12 education and the Christian values we all share. The Herzog Foundation exists to catalyze and accelerate the development of quality Christ-centered K-12 education nationwide, helping families and culture flourish. One of their most impactful resources for Christian school leaders like us is the Herzog Foundation Institute. This program offers fully funded training events and retreats, enabling us to sharpen our skills without adding cost to our schools. Led by national experts, these events cover essential topics like marketing, donor development, and culture building, all tailored to the unique needs of Christian schools. Held monthly in Kansas City and other locations across the country, these events equip schools and their leaders with the tools and strategies they need to thrive. Don't miss the opportunity to explore all the Herzog Foundation has to offer. Together, we can strengthen Christ-centered education. Learn more at herzogfoundation.com. That's herzogfoundation.com. You've got lesson plans, parent-teacher conferences, and now hiring? Don't let recruiting become your next headache. Let Zockel HR Consulting help with the heavy lifting. Visit www.zhrconsulting.com today. Well, I must say, Mark, that whether or not I have a choice, I do enjoy being here with you. I enjoy talking about our schools. And you know what? I enjoy talking about school choice.
That's what we're going today.
That's what we're going to talk about.
That's what we're going today. We've talked about, we've dabbled in it. We've put our fingers in it, especially around election time. We talked about school choice some more. Earlier on, we had a report that we read and reviewed talking about school choice. But we will be in the midst of National School Choice Week. Break out the yellow scarves. We will be in NSCW week. Oh, wait, actually, NSCW includes the week, so you can't say week. It's like when my students talk to me and they say, personally, I believe. No. You can just make the statement. Macaroni and cheese is best. You saying that
is what
you've done everything
personally
you just
believe.
were going to say by saying, personally, I believe mac and cheese is best. It drives me up a while, especially when they write it, because then their speech harms their writing.
That's extra words. They can fill out their word count.
Yeah, extra words to get marked down for. But it's going to be National School Choice Week, and this will be coming out right in the midst of National School Choice Week. So let's talk about National School Choice Week and just school choice in general here in the United States of America and hopefully elsewhere. And I'll say, there's been 2 times in the taping of this podcast, the recording of this podcast, that I have been moved to think about school choice more than I ever had. And the first time was coming across a quote from a like-minded individual, though not necessarily a Christian institution, but the statement was made: why should your zip code determine where your student goes to school? Why should our zip codes determine where our children go to school? It's a great thought.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of one of those things too, when you look back through history, that, it just suddenly became that way and everybody was okay with it. Because I can't help but think about back in the Renaissance era.
Renaissance.
Where people were finally like, yes, education's important, but beyond reading and writing, like, I want to further myself. And in order to do that, I want to attach myself to the person who is the best at that, or either that, or they're the best at teaching it. And you even see that some, I was talking to my kids just this weekend. We were looking at a story where somebody is, a child is sent away to boarding school. And I said, how would you like that? That I just send you away, see you at Christmas and maybe on your birthday, but you'd get a good education, because that's why we would send you there.
Yeah.
But that's historically the way people have valued education. But now it's just, well, there's the school down the street, so there's no other options. There you go down there.
I have a boarding school thought. Just so you know, boarding schools are alive and well in this world. Yeah. I imagine that overall, if you think of all the students in the world, it's probably less than 1% that actually attend a boarding school. If we think of private school being, whatever small percentage of the education landscape of the U.S. anyway, and then of the world even greater. But there was a student that I had who had been looked upon as a potential soccer talent and had gone through and done some pre-Olympic stage, junior Olympic sort of things, and had gotten the notice of some schools, some like high schools, some like prep schools. And there was a well-known prep school in the Minnesota area that had actually gone so far as to contact him, have a coach talk with him. And the parents really were not entertaining this at all. They had no desire. They had no thought they would ever put their kid in this Minnesota boarding school literally halfway across the country. But still, it was not only of an interest, but this school regularly made those sort of overtures to students that they thought would be appropriate for them. And that's something. Talk about choice. But the second thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this National School Choice Week was the recent conversations we've had with those my du boys that I talk to often, and the senses that when I was talking about me selling Christian education poorly, and we're seeing what is represented amongst just our families when it comes to where our students go to school. And I need to pause and be thankful for the opportunities that we have right now to place our children where we wish for them to go. And much like it is when we're at birthday parties, or when we are at family reunions, or just church, and we see parents handle their students in different ways, their children in different ways, far be it for me to comment, especially as a peer, perhaps, especially with those I'm not super close to, but far be it for me to comment on your parenting style to any significant extent, unless you're asking for it. And maybe your kid is asking for it, and they deserve it. Yeah. But far be it for me to comment on that in a non-professional way, but also, it's just in general, like people raise their kids in different ways. I'm not talking about the tenets of the scripture. I'm talking about, like, my kid isn't going to eat sugar that day, or something. Like, no, you're not going to go jump off that thing that my kid is jumping off of, right? Or something like that. So yeah, I do think about those two instances in our discussions, even to this point, concerning school choice. So.
Yeah, no, I guess this is another thing, because you mentioned seeing that comment and then really giving school choice more attention than we had in the past, because I guess perhaps it is that idea that, well, we don't have any other choice, in the sense of, like, I know from my parents, like, private school was the only choice. It was the only option. Granted, they're going to have to pay for it. They're going to have to figure it out, and trusting in the Lord a lot for that. But the intriguing, and I can remember early conversations about this when politically it was starting to pick up some steam, is like, okay, like, while it would be great for my tax dollars to be reallocated to support, the school I am sending my kids to, and that could then make it more affordable for me to send my kids there. And other people can have those options as well. But we've already talked about this a lot. We're not going to spend a lot of time in this episode of the concerns that some schools might have. I mean, even potentially some of our schools in our circle that might come to this National School Choice Week and say, yes, we celebrate school choice, but we're going to kind of separate ourselves from the national celebration, or, the I don't know, just because we don't want to be tied to associations or potentially obligated because funds are now coming our way in any way, shape, or form. Like, we get all of those concerns and we appreciate them, and we encourage, don't give up those concerns. Make sure we do follow through with that. But that's not really what we want to focus on, more so of what is the benefits of school choice, and why should we take a little bit of extra time, perhaps in this week when people are focused on it, to just share with our communities, our constituency, and even I would go so far to say we ought to be also reaching out to our representation in government, both state and national, and encouraging them, like, here is how your constituents could really benefit from a school choice program. So that's kind of what we're centering in on in our conversation right now.
Steve, if we're going to ask as you said, if we're going to ask the question, why should our listening audience, why should our peer Christian school administrators care about school choice at all? I'm gonna, we came up with some thoughts prior to this show. We're gonna look through those now, and you just hit on one. So I'm gonna go knock on that door now. The advocacy for educational freedom. I heard somebody once say, and this is about the Christian universities and colleges, we probably won't feel the impact of Christian universities and Christian colleges until they're gone. I had to think, okay, what does that mean? That I need to go out of my way to support them more? Does that mean that I need to make sure that I send my kids there, I take my college tours theirs, and not to secular places? I had to think about that as a Christian school administrator. What does that mean for me if I'm not celebrating? It's the same with the students going to ministry. If I'm not pushing my students to ministry, pushing, relative term, if I'm not increasing visibility of ministry opportunities for my students to serve in as careers, who is? If I'm not pushing Christian education past high school, what would you expect of me? That would be my job. That's what I should be doing, to at least to some extent, to an appropriate extent anyway. So when it comes to the advocacy for educational freedom, I go back to that thought and think, okay, I don't want to only start caring about advocating for leaving our schools alone, allowing us to do what we do if we do have the rights in whatever state we're in to act the way we do, or I don't want to lose the right and then start advocating for it. I want to do so in preparation, not reaction to, though perhaps you're in a state where reaction at this point is what it is, and you're going to have to react to something that's come down the pike, but you're going to advocate for the educational freedom. I do think and you even mentioned this earlier, we're in a political climate right now that's probably more open to educational freedom, to school choice, to seeing funding from tax dollars go to schools that are not government run. We may be in a new epoch of educational history in the United States of America. We want to make sure we're advocating from the very start concerning that. Anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, no, I would just say along those same lines I understand it's a balancing act of you have the parents that are wanting what's best for their child, and they sit down and they weigh out the options, even as we were saying, they may not think that they have any, but, let's just, as most parents do, let's shoot for the moon. Let's say, what would be our determination of the best environment, the best scenario for our child's education. And when you boil it down, and even they've identified this private Christian school that's just checking off all the marks, and then you get to to the price, and it's best, and say, saying what we will say about having faith and following God by faith and trusting, that he will provide. Like, yes, we're going to encourage that, but regardless of where this parent is in their faith, their maturity, just to be able to say, I don't know how we can do it. Like, it just doesn't seem plausible for us. And then you remove it as an option just because of cost. Like, that's rough. You want to make sure, and especially in our country of opportunity, which is, that's what we've built this country on, of pursuing what is best. And yet to have to abandon that because of, cost of living and everything else, it just doesn't seem to fly with what America was built upon. So I look at this as an opportunity to embrace our heritage, our political heritage, while at the same time encouraging families that, you know what, and we saw this with COVID, right? There were those families that said, I can't tell you how many families I sat down to talk to, and when they were making their decision for where to send their first child, we really wanted them in Christian education, but it just didn't make sense when I looked at the checkbook and when I looked at the budget, and it just it didn't make sense to us, whether it be lack of faith or just it just didn't. And here was a decent public school, which that was the other thing that was always said to me. It was never like this public school option was woo. It was awesome until it wasn't. It was just, we're going to settle for that. And now we're in this scenario where that's not good anymore, and that's not an option anymore. And so we still don't know how it's going to work, but now we will bring private education into the playing field.
I got to tell you, there are transcendent truths that I'm a bad salesman, whatever happens to be. There are certain things which, no matter which Christian school it is, or which public school it is, or which homeschool, whatever, there's certain transcendent truths amongst those paradigms. And concerning what you just said about the parents who saw their local school as okay, good enough, so on and so forth, there's statistics on that. There are the Phi Delta Kaplan, I believe it is, puts out an annual review of public schools. And one of the questions they often ask, one of the questions I believe that they repeatedly ask, is parents of what they think about the schools that are next to them, like their local school versus the school across town, or at least just where would you rank them as far as high. And people tend to, in their local geography, they tend to say that the schools are strongest that are closest to them, whether or not that's actually the case. So some of that comes down to simply like, this is where I went to school, or this is just what my peers have kids that go here, so I've heard good things or bad things. Some of that's all smoke and mirrors. It really happens sadly to be.
Even the thing of like, well, this is the school that public transportation will take them to, so I don't have to pick them up and drop them off.
Yeah.
That is sometimes the decision maker, and we don't want that shouldn't be the decision maker for our kids. Yeah. We want to make sure that they're getting exactly what we want them to get.
Now, we cannot be I suppose people would find us to be conservative. We can't be conservative as hosts here and as Christian school principals and not talk about capitalism and competition and whatnot when it comes to school choice. So it would be disingenuous of us to say we don't want competition between the private schools who might benefit from school choice, or like the increase in the mind's eye of, oh, there are more options out here. Increased visibility and increased competition. If I'm a believer in the economic system, which is described, I love this. One of Du Bois describes different. He's an accountant by trade, and he describes different economic systems often in our discussions. And his reverberating theme is, there's no perfect economic system. They're all bad. Someone's going to get hurt in all of them
because they all involve humans. At the end of the day, that's
absolutely
it.
Greedy humans, and it's money. People are most greedy over money, and that's what. So but the least bad of the bad is capitalism, is how he would phrase it. And the free market economy, capitalism. So in that same vein, if I'm going to agree with him, I'm going to be thankful for what we have in our whatever limited range of free market we happen to be in. I can't be upset that school choice will come around and increase the competition around me. I have to see that as a godsend, as a good thing, as okay, well now there's competition should hone me so our parents, we get it for athletics, but when it comes to seeing our school get stronger, sometimes we get territorial. And I know the Herzog Foundation talks about this when it talks about the siloing of Christian education and the siloing of the information, which comes with making it stronger even. Shout out to Herzog for, we believe it as well. It should be more shared, making us all stronger. We should be trying to with whatever level of conscientiousness we can to stick to our theological boundaries, understand that we can grow and learn from each other, hopefully as we are here now. I've said a lot. I'm going to stop talking, Matt. Say something else.
I mean, bravo. I'm applauding. I'm standing while I'm still sitting at this table. It's exactly right, because competition, I drive this home and over again in economics and in just most of my history classes. And competition brings out the best, as well as, self-preservation. I think that's another really important point, because, if you want to survive, you're going to figure out a better way.
Yeah. You're going to cut the fat.
Creative.
You will cut the fat. You really will.
So
you will figure out what's important or not. It's not important to maintain that second grade choir that sings at the whatever every other year. But no, that doesn't matter. I don't care how long. I don't care what it was. If we don't have a person to handle it, we're not doing it anymore.
Right. I will say that, there is this Christian mentality that, when we do have, or in an environment where we do have other like-minded Christian private schools, we don't like to, point fingers at them. Here's why we're better. Here's why we're better. Like, we're humble, meek people, right? We can't pride ourselves. And I think that even came out when we were talking about selling Christian school. We really struggle because we don't want to come across as arrogant or prideful in any way, because that's not what God calls us to be.
Kind of against everything we're supposed to be.
Right. But at the same time, understand that competition in the sense of, self-evaluation. What can we be doing better? Why are people choosing not to come to our school? And if it is a reason that is antithetical with our mission, then we ought to change that. We ought to up the game. The only other thing that came to my mind is, right now, because of the current situation, I feel that, what is our largest competition? In my mind, I don't really look at other public schools as competition. I really don't look too much at even other private schools at our competition. And this also seems to be one of those things is like counter to what we're taught biblically, but hold on, don't turn me off. Listen to what I'm about to say. But I feel right now with the current situation in our country, our greatest competition is homeschooling. And I say that in the most respectful, honorable way I can possibly say. I'm not saying, if just people would stop homeschooling, we would have more students. That's not it. It's actually a good thing, because God calls us as parents to be responsible for the education of our children. And when it comes down, as we were talking earlier, with laying all the options out, hands down, if I can sit down and work with my own children through their educational upbringing, there shouldn't be anything better than that. There really shouldn't.
The numbers right now are saying,
if
since
I'm capable,
COVID, those are, homeschooling is growing. So that's not just us making that up.
People it is.
Secular and private, secular public, the secular and Christian, those who believe the word not. It is a growing
and
sphere.
So I guess it's a good thing on one hand that, more parents are taking that responsibility seriously and are doing their best. The only problem that I could foresee is, again, just that we're making that decision for the convenience of it. We're making that decision because we don't have any other options. Whether, I continue to say, as much as I'm an educator, if I had to homeschool my children, it would not be a good situation for me or for them, And so, I still, my wife and I would wholeheartedly agree. We would embrace that opportunity, but at the same time,
Mhm.
there is a better option, and we would opt for that better option rather than putting
Yeah.
ourselves through that.
Or them through that.
So school choice, if that were to be a thing where suddenly we're helped out and those financial obstacles are out of the way, and we, because of competition, are getting better, the private schools are getting better, then I would tend to believe that some of those parents that have opted for homeschool would say, you know what, let's rethink this, because it is more accessible now, and it is, we can have more confidence in it than perhaps we had before.
You bring us to our third point, the opportunity to showcase unique values. So if we're so the competition is going to drive us to rethink what we do. And it could drive us to rethink, okay, in this case, as you point out, why shouldn't I push all of our families to just go homeschool? But as you noted, there are unique things concerning your school, the schools that we know, the schools that we love, the schools that are listening to this. There are unique things about our schools that stand apart, and whether or not we think they do, and I think this is a wonderful reason to go through accreditation. Accreditation demands that you get very specific about your school identity. And maybe your school identity is we build our students up in soccer to be the greatest soccer Christian school there ever was. We have a real need for our students to all be in a choir, and they'll be in a choir from the time they're in kindergarten to the time they graduate, and it's mandatory. Maybe it's, if it was a charter school, it'd be dance or STEM or 100 different things. Whatever it looks like, showcasing our unique value, what we bring to the table. Maybe that's maybe that's literally your size. Maybe that's, you are tiny, and that micro schools are a thing now for a reason just like this. School choice will create an environment, perhaps, especially if money is entailed in it, that could allow for our schools to stand out, or to evidence to them why the Christian worldview, why the academics and the supportive environment, which would be a part of a strong Christian school, stand out. Why that's value, why that's a valuable proposition for them to consider.
And I would say, just very simply, because one of the things I value with the actual program of National School Choice Week, we get the packet in the mail of, you mentioned the yellow scarves, stickers, and a bunch of stuff. But my favorite thing in that packet, which I don't always use what they distribute, but I always try to incorporate this in some way, and it's so simple. It's just giving your students an opportunity to finish the prompt, I love my school because.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
And you know what? We can sit down, as we did with selling Christian schools, and come up with, we go on field trips and we do this and we do that. But when you read that, newly learning handwriting script or whatever of a third grader that says, I love my school because my teacher knows me. My teacher, cares about me, or my friends, we get to talk about God. They find the simple things that we ought to elevate and broadcast here, there, and everywhere. So that's just another reason to sing it from the mountaintops.
Yeah.
That we have opportunities that perhaps others don't.
Sing.
Okay, maybe
sing it from the mountaintops.
No,
sing.
What's our last point?
Last point is the one we're going to spend no time on.
Zero
because
time.
It's the one that's the most obvious. There could be a boon to your enrollment. There could be a boon to our enrollment, which would be more money. You know what? But that is a driving force. So, that's an obvious one.
So far down. Yeah.
Can't be the one that drives us, because then we are after not filthy lucre in that point, because it's our money returned to us. But at some point, we shouldn't just value school choice because it drives money our way. We should value it for the things that we just said you should value it for. Yeah. So make sure you do.
Yeah, I would say that's the one that freaks me out. It's like the potential of more applications and more registrations in which we're actually going to have to sit down and be like, okay, who gets to come, who doesn't, because of schools that have smaller facilities, and we've got those caps, and we're already there without the school choice. So I get that. It can be like more people having that opportunity might increase. But again, that is a great problem to have.
Sure.
And it also, in that situation, with a school choice in place, a school choice program, I know for me, if we were ever to actually be at that point where they were absolutely full, but we still have all of a stack of applications, I can contact those and say, hey, check out this school, check out that school, check out this school, because, again, we said it's friendly competition. If I can encourage people, in some way to still follow through with putting their child in a place that's better than just what's default, then I see it as a growing opportunity as well.
0 minutes is not 0 minutes to us.
Yeah,
that's for sure. You got us, Brian. You got us. Okay.
Yeah.
But this time it wasn't me. It was Matt. So heads up on that.
Yeah.
A few places you can go to learn more about school choice. Of course, there is the National School Choice Week organization, which it was begun as the National School Choice Annual Fund or something like that, and became what it is with the yellow scarves that represent, that remind us of buses, remind us of schools. There's EdChoice, edchoice.org. They do a lot of work with the Heritage Foundation and others about school choice in America. There's the American Federation for Children. There is the Center for Education Reform. There is Excel in Ed. And those are just a few of the ones that are out there. And there are more coming, especially with everything going on politically. But it's time for us to wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, let's get to our Christian Administrator Spotlight, which for this episode goes out to Aaron Carnahan, who is the administrator of Maranatha Baptist Academy in St. Robert, Missouri.
All right, so Aaron, thank you so much for your work there at Maranatha Baptist Academy. We're going to take a moment to pray for you as your role, in your role as president of the leadership team and of the Missouri Association of Christian Schools, and your roles there. And it seemingly even maybe your roles are reversed, where in the past you might have been the executive director and now you're the president. But thank you for a consistent role there as well as your school. So let's go ahead and pray for you now. Father in heaven, we think of Aaron Carnahan now. We think of the work that he does for you locally in his school building, as well as all of Missouri and the broader national representation of Christian schools. Bless him in that work. Bless him specifically as he works through whatever reaction to Inauguration Day he's going to have in his school, and whatever is coming up to him in the end of January, and perhaps the end of his quarter perhaps is coming up for them. The flipping of the quarter might be coming up. Give him grace in this time. Amen.
Amen. And that's going to wrap up this episode. And we hope you all have a wonderful National School Choice Week, and encourage others on social media to celebrate your school, to celebrate school choice. I mean, as we said earlier, contact legislation. We'd love to see some action on this in this new presidential era. I mean, maybe even share this episode of the Christian Principles Podcast.
All right. Thanks for going with us today.
Could we ask you a favor? Please help us grow our channel by clicking on the plus follow button at the top of the screen on Apple Podcasts, or the follow button on the main podcast page on Spotify. Taking this step helps boost our ratings, but more importantly, gets us in more Christian school admins' ears. Also, it'll keep our latest content in your feed. This little action could help us take this podcast a long way.